Good morning. How is morale out there in the world? Thanks for hanging out here with us. Lucas is back. Jackson is back there. We're with you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045. The number, F&M Bank Chat at your disposal, as is the custom. You can chime in, chirp if you want on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Live stream the show. Hang out in studio with us if you so choose. A lot of moving parts yesterday. Well, not really on the trade deadline. There was moving parts, but just not here locally.
Yeah, there was some interesting stuff around the league.
The interest was more so for the college football playoff rankings, the 12-team college football playoff rankings. The first iteration of them comes out. Now, I will say, before you pin this on me for being self-involved, Austin Stanley has already called it the Buck Rising Bowl.
What? Tennessee, Indiana?
Tennessee. Indiana at Tennessee. Now, you can play your little fight music, and that's cute. But you don't want to see the number 9 ranked Indiana Hoosiers trotting into Neyland Stadium. Bet your ass. I feel like that's a game that would give you BVS all up and down that studio back there, Jackson.
I want every bit of the Indiana Hoosier smoke. Give me Tennessee by 3 touchdowns.
I saw that they haven't put out a line yet, obviously, because there's still several more weeks to go before these things are made official, but that's what it looks like right now.
Yeah, they haven't put out a line yet. Yeah, because what are we talking about? This is
no.
a ranking.
There is a line. Pate put out a line last night. Tennessee minus 6.5, according to the JP.
Right, that's what it would be. Yes, but the game is not scheduled to happen. So no, Vegas has not put out a line yet.
No.
Free money.
Of course, that is the case.
Free money.
So you have a interesting collection of football teams here, where it starts with Boise State at 12. We'll work our way up the rankings. Alabama at 11, the 2-loss team making an appearance there. Notre Dame, BYU, Indiana, Tennessee, Penn State, Texas, Miami, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon as the number 1 team in the initial college football playoff rankings. Unbeaten Oregon is the number 1 team, understandably so. Ohio State, Georgia, Miami makes sense. If you're rounding out the top 4, Texas on the outside looking in of that top 4. They had the first 2 teams out as Texas A&M, who experienced their first SEC loss, of course, this weekend, and SMU, also first team out.
A lot of people upset. A lot of people happy this morning. Of course, we're still talking about the college football playoff ranking. I love how much...
Very snowflake of you to take Election Day off, by the way. Well done by you.
I love yesterday was terrible for me. I felt awful, and I started to feel better before I went to bed.
So
appreciate you guys holding it down for me. I love how much the 12-team playoff actually makes the ranking in Week 10 actually mean something. Because before... you would do the whole charade, the whole show, college football playoff ranking. We'd break it down for an hour. But when it was just 4 teams, it was like I guess we could look at this, but let's just wait and see who wins conference titles, and that's pretty much going to determine this. But now with the 12-team playoff, it means so much more to know what the committee thinks about and where they stand on teams like Tennessee and Indiana and BYU and Texas A&M. Some of this stuff's going to take care of itself. Like you, right before we went on the air, you seem to be confused why Alabama is as high as it is?
Yeah.
At 11?
Kind of curious what they're doing with 2-loss Alabama right now. I know they have the win over Georgia. That's one of the best wins of the season, even if Alabama's season has not gone to plan, and that Vanderbilt, the loss to Vandy, is now a ranked loss and a loss to a bowl-eligible team, which does change the math on that as a 2-loss Alabama team.
Well, Vandy not ranked according to the playoff.
Oh, right.
Many Vandy fans believe they were snubbed by the College Football Playoff Committee.
Oh, really?
They are 24 in the AP poll. They were not ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee last night. But the thing about Alabama being the highest-ranked 2-loss team and technically being in, I say with quotation marks, is that's going to take care of itself. Alabama plays LSU on Saturday. Winner of that game likely wins out and is in. Loser of that game is eliminated. They're out. So there are a few teams, a few situations in this top 12 that are just going to take care of themselves. Alabama, LSU is one of them. One of those teams probably is in. The loser of that game in Baton Rouge Saturday is definitely out.
LSU now at 15 at 6-2 according to the college football playoff rankings. The top 25 from Boise State down, SMU, A&M, LSU, Ole Miss at 16, worth monitoring. Iowa State, Pitt, K-State, Colorado, Washington State, Louisville, Clemson, Missouri, get them out of here. I add parenthetically, and Army rounds out the top 25 as an 8-0 team at this point.
I love that part of the reasoning for Missouri being ranked was their win over Vanderbilt. That's a quality win. It's their most quality win.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Get Missouri.
Get them out of here.
I know Vandy lost to Mizzou in overtime. Put Vandy in the top 25. Get Missouri out of there.
So you were telling me that people were alleging Big Ten bias because Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, is the front-facing member of the college football playoff selection committee. And he was advocating that Texas's win at Michigan was still a quality win that had to be factored in. But, of course, Michigan is one of the I don't even want to call them disappointing. Like, I didn't really think Michigan was going to do much anyway, but they are one of the least fearsome teams in Power 5 college football this year, given that I don't want to say they don't have a quarterback. They do have a player trying to play quarterback. They just don't have good quarterback play.
Yeah, they're 5-4. They're 10th in the Big Ten right now.
Quality win. Quality win. Big Ten bias.
And they still got to play Indiana and Ohio State.
That's right.
Very, very real possibility of Michigan finishing 6-6 this year. So it was kind of funny to see the athletic director of Michigan talking about how the Texas win at the Big House holds weight. But I do kind of agree with him because that was early in the year against the defending national champs. Michigan still has more NFL players on their roster than many teams Texas has played and will play this year. At the time, it was a top 10 win. So I don't totally dismiss that notion that that win means nothing. You go up to Michigan and you win. When they're coming off a national title, I don't care. I still think that means something, especially early in the season.
So I will re-emphasize, or I guess we haven't technically gone through what the matchups would look like, because we'll do this every Wednesday, I guess, what the matchups will look like if the college football playoff started today. If the college football playoff started today, it would be Ohio State hosting Boise State. It would be Tennessee hosting Indiana, Texas hosting Alabama, Penn State hosting Notre Dame. Then, of course, the top four would be the BYU Cougars, Oregon, Miami, and Georgia, who would get that first-round bye and would automatically be in the quarterfinals of the initial 12-team college football playoff. So Indiana, Tennessee, that's a fun game. That's a really fun game. I selfishly am advocating for them to swap spots, not because I'm interested in Indiana being ranked higher than Tennessee, though I would come in here talking all manner of noise that I had no real investment in other than to try and bother Lucas and Jackson on a regular basis. But that same weekend is the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts, which would benefit my travel schedule if the playoff game was in Bloomington as opposed to Knoxville, because that's a 45-minute drive as opposed to a 5.5-hour drive.
Well, here's my biggest question on that, and we can revisit this with David Ubben when he joins at 11:20.
Ooh, fun.
So Indiana, undefeated, is still ranked behind a one-loss Tennessee, whose one loss is to Arkansas. It's not a great loss, right? So will that reasoning hold over if the season finishes with chalk, so to speak, and Tennessee narrowly loses to Georgia and Indiana narrowly loses to Ohio State? Would a 10-2 Tennessee still be ranked above an 11-1 Indiana if both of those teams play Georgia and Ohio State closely? And those are good games because not a lot of other stuff would change around those two teams' resumes. So I'm not sure what reason the committee would have to flip them. But looking at that, I say, okay, are you going to stay consistent then? If one-loss Tennessee is above undefeated Indiana, is 10-2 Tennessee above 11-1 Indiana when it's all said and done? And I suppose Tennessee would have a decent win against Vanderbilt if that were the case. Indiana, who does Indiana play apart from Ohio State down the stretch? Don't know.
They have Michigan, as you mentioned.
And Purdue.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Rivalry week.
So not much about the resumes would change. So that's where I'm kind of keeping my eye on the committee. Say, okay, so are you going to keep this energy at the end of the season, or are you going to flip it because one team's 11-1 and one team's 10-2? even though you put this team above that one just 4 weeks ago.
Why are you asking questions that you already know the answer to? Now, we can, of course, run this by David Ubben again at 11:20 when he joins the show, but you are asking if the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is going to be consistent on something, and I believe that all of us already have the answer to that question based on just experience. I know it's 12 as opposed to 4 now, so they can get a little more creative with the math if they want to. But consistency is not something that I associate. The word association does not jive with the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. But that's neither here nor there. 615-737-1045 is the number. Of course, the Titans are back on the practice field today. We will keep you updated with what Brian Callahan says. If it was a press conference after a practice that Will Levis had practiced in, then we might consider carrying it. But since there are no real health updates prior to practice taking place, we will just keep you updated with things that you need to know. The Titans did make a signing today, reported by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN First. Pending a physical, safety Mike Edwards is getting ready to sign with the Tennessee Titans. He asked the Bills to grant his release on Tuesday. That was granted. He has played precious little football for the Bills this year. So the Titans add a safety in the absence of Quandre Diggs, who has not yet been placed on injured reserve to my knowledge. But that is probably a part of the expectation here in a little bit. You have headlines?
Several.
NFL headlines are next.
It's time for NFL headlines with Lucas Panzica.
It's
Timely.
It's real bold. It's just real bold strategy today.
The Detroit Lions have their Aiden Hutchinson replacement.
Oh, that's where we're going to start. Okay.
Probably the most notable trade of the NFL trade deadline in terms of a contender filling a position of need. The Lions acquire Browns edge rusher Zadarius Smith and a 2026 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2025 5th and a 2026 6th-round pick. Zadarius Smith, 5 sacks this season. He has 22 quarterback pressures. That is 17 more than any other edge rusher currently on the Lions roster, not named Aiden Hutchinson. And this makes 3 NFC North teams now for Zadarius Smith. He continues his tour of the NFC North. He's played for the Packers, the Vikings, and now the Detroit Lions.
So it was funny because I don't know how on your alleged sickness deathbed you were paying attention to what NFL players who were potentially up for trades were tweeting yesterday. But Zadarius Smith had a funny tweet just in the morning before he got traded that just said SMH, which made me think that, are they not getting a deal done? Is he going to be stuck in Cleveland, this poor bastard? But Zadarius Smith is honestly a bigger winner than is the Detroit Lions, though the Detroit Lions obviously need him as badly as anybody on their football team right now. This gives them this keeps their hopes alive to legitimately compete for a Super Bowl. The NFC is wide open. The only thing that division is still wide open. I know that Green Bay had their win streak ended over the weekend. I know that Minnesota has experienced the first couple of losses of their season. Certainly one at the hands of Detroit. Detroit looks like an absolute wagon, just out here crushing teams. But Zadarius Smith is a huge beneficiary of this. Like you said, his best football is probably behind him at this stage of his career, but he is still a quality player. And the pressure rate, because you bring up his pressures, it's the lowest it's been in 3 years.
Sure.
13.2% pressure rate.
He's 32 years old.
Oh, yeah. No, and he's, by the way, he's benefited from Myles Garrett. So because the Browns, the quality of the Browns defense has not been in question. It's just been their quarterback play that's absolutely sandbagged and nuked their season, essentially. He will be the focal point, though, for the Detroit Lions defense now. And I'd be curious to see how much how far he can really take them as the guy in Detroit this year.
He signed a 2-year extension with the Browns back in March. So the Lions basically acquire that contract. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson is out for the season, but there just continues to be shades of hints that he could come back at the end of the year in the playoffs, even if it's just for the Super Bowl. So I'm sure Lions fans are salivating at the idea of Aiden Hutchinson making a triumphant return to pair up alongside Zadarius Smith when they play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl in 2025.
Yeah, sure. I get that, but I'm reminded of Titans fans being very excited to see Derrick Henry back out there after 2021, and then they probably should have leaned more on Deontay Foreman in that game.
In hindsight, yeah.
Than Derrick Henry. And, it's easy to do in retrospect, but just something to keep in mind for very excitable Lions fans. Understandably so. Not trying to take anything away from them, but let's not get crazy.
Yeah. He, to his credit, missed basically all of the 2021 season, Zadarius Smith, with a back injury. Since then, since the start of the 2022 season, he has been completely healthy for the most part, and he has over 20 sacks in that span. Had 5.5 last year. He's already got 5 to this point this season. So he's been productive, and the Lions have their guy. The Steelers have acquired edge rusher Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers for a 2025 7th-round pick. 31 years old, has 2.5 sacks this season, and he joins a front that obviously includes T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward.
Well, they also traded for Mike Williams.
Yes, that was going to be my next thing.
Oh, you felt it necessary to make those 2 different headlines?
Steelers get wide receiver Mike Williams from the Jets for a 2025 5th-round pick. So Pittsburgh going for it, the current AFC North leaders.
Well, that's the thing. They're leading that division. Like, Baltimore's got the best offense in football, but it is Pittsburgh's division to lose right now. They are keenly aware of that, and to give that defensive front. Now, Preston Smith isn't the best edge guy in football, but Green Bay's defense has been excellent under Jeff Hafley this year. They have figured out really how to maximize the performance of that group. And they feel, that Preston Smith was more a luxury and that they can maintain that level of play in the NFC North without him. Now, for the Steelers in particular, I'd be curious to look at the Steelers' schedule, actually, to see how many more games they have, how many more divisional games they have at this point moving forward.
They play the Commanders this weekend, and then they host the Ravens on the 17th, and then they take on the Browns, and then the Bengals, and then the Browns. So after this weekend, they have 4 straight divisional games, and they will have 2 more after that. They'll have to play the Ravens and Bengals again within the last 3 weeks of the season, sandwiched by the Chiefs on Christmas Day.
They're arming themselves for what will be a competitive second half of the season in the AFC North because, the Browns are, I don't want to say dead, buried, and gone because potentially they could get better quarterback play and maybe make a mess of something. But the Bengals are more to be feared in that division right now than are the Cleveland Browns. The Ravens are obviously a very, very potent team. Their defense has injury and execution issues that have popped up in the last couple of weeks, though they did get right against the Broncos this weekend. Steelers make a lot of sense. Are they contenders?
Oof. Are they contenders? What a fascinating question that is.
No, there's a clear and obvious answer to it. You just want to make it a fascinating question.
You're going to say yes? Yeah, 6-2 at this point in the year with Mike Tomlin as their coach.
They're leading one of the hardest divisions in football.
They also haven't played a divisional game.
Yeah.
They're through their easy part of the schedule. No more Giants and Jets and Raiders on the schedule for Pittsburgh. They have their entire divisional.
They have played a divisional game. They only have 4 divisional games left on the schedule.
No, they have not played a divisional game.
Well, then how would that be so that they would only have 4 divisional games left on their schedule?
That's just in the next 5 weeks.
Oh.
They play the Ravens and Bengals within the last 3 weeks of the year.
Oh.
And they still have to play the Browns twice, the Ravens twice, and the Bengals twice.
Did you say that?
And I said they play the Commanders this week, and then it goes Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns.
Okay, I thought you meant that they had 4 divisional games left.
And then they got to play the Ravens and Bengals within the last 3 weeks of the year. Their only non-divisional games left on the schedule are in Washington, in Philadelphia, and hosting the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh.
So it is all uphill from here. It is an uphill climb for the Steelers.
Well, then they're wise to buy. Now, the Mike Williams thing, again, this is beneficial for Mike Williams more than it is the Steelers. He just wasn't getting targets in New York. Like, they added Lazard, who Rodgers knows better and likes better. So I don't know if he likes him personally better, but he is more comfortable throwing to Alan Lazard, more comfortable throwing to Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson can't be the odd man out in that equation.
Mike Williams also had some drops and some miscommunications. There was, it was a couple games ago with the Jets where Rodgers was talking about Mike Williams running the wrong route on one interception that he threw. So, yeah, I felt like that experience was over in New York. We'll keep it in the AFC North. The Ravens acquire Rams cornerback Tre'Davious White and a 2027 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2026 7th that goes back to L.A. Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins have dealt with injuries. Wiggins, obviously a rookie, but Humphrey has dealt with injuries going back to last year, so they beef up their defensive backfield a little bit. Ravens and Bengals play tomorrow night. Interesting Thursday night football game.
Burt was beside himself last night on primetime.
Yeah.
He feels them to be trade deadline losers. The defense is the thing. That's something that we'll talk about because obviously Titans didn't make a move yesterday. They had 2 pre-deadline deals, but those were weeks ago at this point with DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones. He wanted Sebastian Joseph Day. Why Sebastian Joseph Day is still a Titan today is perplexing to me, frankly. And Brian, no, it's not technically Brian Callahan's department, but that would be a curious question to have answered at the Titans press conference today. It's a player on an expiring contract. I would have taken a 7th-round pick for a player on an expiring contract. Arden Key is a different type of situation where you still have years left on that deal that could potentially work for you in at least a supplementary role. But there's no reason to hang on to Sebastian Joseph Day, no matter how low the offer was. Even if it's like a 2026 7th-round pick, I'm not so attached to this guy. He's been a fine player, to his credit. He's a quality interior defensive lineman, but that's not the only reason that Burt was upset. I think Burt wanted more cornerback help. I think Burt wanted more defensive help right now. Ravens defense seems to be the thing that might undermine them the most or might be the biggest weakness on the team this year, specific to that secondary because it's been a bit inconsistent. Tre'Davious White at this stage of his career, I don't know how much he actually helps you as opposed to being a depth guy.
I mean, who's their best edge rusher right now? Is it Kyle Van Noy?
Probably.
He's got 7 sacks.
Yeah.
33 years old.
I'd have to look at the pressures, but
Clowney's not there to clean up stuff anymore. He's back home in Carolina. So, yeah, Ravens beef up their secondary a little bit with the guy who was a 2019 first-team All-Pro corner.
Somebody just yelled at me. I assume it's yelling at me because it's in all caps. Do you understand why people use all caps when they're not trying to?
Ask Brady Hoke.
It's a good question.
We should have him on the show.
Why?
Just to ask him that question.
Okay.
Lucas would like to ask him about his trauma of the 2017 season.
I have many questions.
Yes. Scoop 24 on YouTube says of the Sebastian Joseph Day non-transaction, says in all caps, "We didn't do it. Move on." Oh, okay. I didn't realize there was such a level of attachment to Sebastian Joseph Day here after 8 games of the 2024 season. That's weird.
I mean, were you surprised at how quiet the Titans were? It seems like it came down to Key, Joseph Day, and Jeff.
They weren't quiet. It's just nobody wanted what they were selling. Like they were actively trying to make moves here. That's not in dispute. But they have already upsold what they had to legitimately sell, and that was Hop. Arden, once Zadarius Smith gets done, once the Cardinals trade for the pass rusher, because it really seemed like the only team that had Arden really, really on their radar was Arizona and Monty Ossenfort. Once they do that deal for, is it Baron Browning? Is that the name of the Broncos player that they traded for? Either way. Traded for a Broncos linebacker. I know Baron is in the name somewhere. That takes Arden Key largely off the table, unless, here's the thing that I was curious about, which is, and I brought this up to you on the phone, like Rand Carthon was positioned by the people who hired him as having relationship superpowers. So I would like to have seen those tested to see if there was any kind of deal that could have been done just for the sake, because Rand is good with people and potentially could have gotten a deal over. Now, maybe that's unrealistic. It's probably unrealistic because you're still asking NFL teams to then kind of back themselves into a corner and be like, oh, the edge rushers are gone. Who do I want? Do I want Arden Key? Do I want Harold Landry? Like your best case scenario yesterday was a team getting desperate that still needed edge help, cough, cough, Ravens, and making a move for a player there. But they tried to move players. The only one that they didn't actively try to move was Simmons. The only team that I know that was like legit interested in, I mean, I'm sure there were other teams that were legit interested in Jeff Simmons if Jeff Simmons was available. The only team that I had heard that was actively calling or inquiring about what it would cost to get Jeff Simmons was Minnesota. Beyond that, it's been...
And that was a definitive no, as Diana reported.
Yeah, and by the way, they've been consistent on that for the better part of 3 weeks because Minnesota was inquiring after Hopkins got moved. So that's been company line for a while now. And also, like, I really think the only reason that was a definitive no is because Jeff's hurt. It's not just the elbow. It's whatever's going on with his right leg. And he's not at his best season. Like, if you're going to sell on a player like Jeff, you have to get value that justifies the move. A day 2 pick would, I mean, anything lower than a 3 would have been unacceptable. And even a 3 would probably have been unacceptable, I think, in that situation, at least for the fan base. I don't know about for the front office.
And we have no idea what type of compensation would have been discussed for Joseph Day or Key. Just like a 7th? I mean, what would you be talking about there?
Yeah, I think when you saw the compensation for like Zadarius Smith, and you're looking around and being like, all right, maybe a 7th, and if you're lucky, it's this year's 7th.
Yeah.
For a lot of teams, like, and even then it's probably like a low 7th because you're like, so you're talking about not like a 7th at the top of the draft order, right? You're talking about a 7th from the Ravens or the Chiefs or teams that don't expect to be picking very high up in the draft order in 2025.
Yeah, again, the Browns got Zadarius Smith and a 2026 7th for a 2025 5th and a 2026 6th.
Yeah, so there's some pick swaps in there too.
But the Preston Smith trade was straight up for a 7th.
Yeah, so like Preston Smith is a better player than Arden Key is. Now Harold is different, but I just don't think that there was. Yeah, it didn't really seem like anybody was calling about Harold. And I don't know if that's because of the way that his contract is set up right now, and that's a more expensive contract, nor did it seem that there was much interest in taking on Amani Hooker's money. Maybe there's interest in the player, but not the contract.
A couple more here. Again, that Thursday Night Football matchup tomorrow, Ravens and Bengals. Bengals running back Zach Moss his season is likely over with a neck injury. He has 242 rush yards this year, a pair of rushing touchdowns. He's kind of been the number 2 back behind Chase Brown, who is their lead rusher. So in response, Cincinnati acquired Bears running back Khalil Herbert in exchange for a 2025 seventh.
Yeah, so the neck injury is tough, right, for Zach Moss. That's a really difficult thing. He goes on IR. The corresponding move is the Khalil Herbert trade, who's just in a logjam. Khalil Herbert, a good running back. There's just a handful of decent running backs in Chicago right now. So I think that Moss is kind of a loser at the trade deadline here. Cincinnati doesn't do deadline deals. They don't do trades. Like in-season trades, I think this is only like the second or third I think I saw reported from Cincinnati in season where they're willing to do a deal. And it may be the first where they acquired a player. But Zach Moss was on a 2-year deal. He was a really nice bright spot for the Colts last year. Cashed in 2 years, $8 million. But now they acquire Khalil Herbert, who's going to have more team control. That probably makes Zach Moss, an injured running back, expendable at some point moving forward. So that's a less than ideal situation for Zach Moss, even though Khalil Herbert gets the opportunity to compete on a team that's ascending right now in the Cincinnati Bengals.
Speaking of teams ascending, how about the Washington Commanders, who are in position to bolster positions of need to go for something in 2024 because they have acquired 4-time Pro Bowl cornerback Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. They also acquire in the trade a 2025 fifth, and they send a 2025 third, fourth, and sixth to New Orleans.
Who's having more fun than Commies fans right now?
Nobody. I have maintained for weeks now that is the happiest, most jubilant fan base in the NFL right now relative to what preseason expectations were.
Perpetual losers in the last, 2 decades of NFL football. Worst owner in football cleared out. New ownership, new coach, new front office structure brought in. House money, essentially, with the second overall pick because, sure, you're excited about Jaden Daniels. Sure, you're excited about a player that averaged a first down every play as a college football player, which is still one of the most ridiculous stats. Like, I have to check it sometimes to just make sure that that's factually accurate. It's ridiculous.
His numbers were nuts.
At LSU.
Yeah.
He comes in, and while there is still a learning curve and the second half of the season could bog him down, and it may not be as easy as they've made it seem through the first half of the schedule, the division is in hand for them. The Eagles are surging. Eagles are playing better football right now. A.J. Brown we'll see how much time he ends up missing. It sounds like he got positive returns on his MRI on the knee situation, but it's the Commies division to lose. And I don't think that there's a more house money feeling in the NFL right now than the Washington Commanders. Marshawn Lattimore does make them better, though. They need, I don't know if he's still a shutdown quarter outright, but he's the closest thing that they could get at the deadline for sure. And Saints fans, just miserable. Whatever the Commies fans are right now, Saints fans the opposite.
Yeah, they did fire Dennis Allen, but
I don't. That doesn't fix them.
Talk about a hole to dig out of.
If they fire Mickey Loomis, then maybe we're talking. Their GM, who's been there forever and seems like, he is the closest thing to a dinosaur I think you could find in the NFL right now.
I don't think they are anywhere close to firing Mickey Loomis.
I don't either, which is why you would not feel good about the situation if you're a Saints fan.
He is apparently the executor of the will of the owner of the New Orleans Saints.
No, that's not true. Surely that's not true. We'll take a commercial break while Lucas endeavors to find out if that is actually a thing or not. You also have SEC observations next, yes?
I sure do.
All right. I'm Buck Rising.
Hey, it's Ramon Foster, 104.5 The Zone. Blending digital and also radio is one of the best things you can do. One, you get a lot of people in their cars that listen to us, and on the digital side, we can also show your products, talk about your products, see us, speak about you. So if you're in the business of wanting to be bigger, have a brand that everyone knows about, have me, Ramon Foster, or anyone at 104.5 The Zone endorse you, and I promise you, it'll be exactly what you want.
I love living in Middle Tennessee. We've got great restaurants, entertainment, sports, and one of the nation's top Ford dealers right here in our backyard. Two Rivers Ford. Remember that name. Two Rivers has been a staple in our community since 1983. They're locally owned. They have a non-commissioned sales team, and they sell below MSRP. They've been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
Playoff rankings to talk about. 7 SEC teams in the top 16 of the first college football playoff ranking.
And I can't believe you came in this morning crying Big Ten bias.
Oh, it was tongue-in-cheek.
No.
It was tongue-in-cheek.
There's always a little truth to it.
No, I think some people took issue, too, with Michigan AD Ward Manuel.
That was you rage tweeting Ward Manuel last night, wasn't it?
I haven't tweeted in a while. Ward Manuel talking about the Penn State-Ohio State game being a back and forth, where it was really Penn State spotting Ohio State 10 points and then scoring 3 the rest of the way. I suppose they were 1 or 2 plays away from winning that game, which is essentially what he meant. But all besides the point, 7 teams in the top 16. I think Vanderbilt got snubbed, should have been in the top 25. That's a conversation for later. Vanderbilt owns the state of Alabama after beating Auburn and owns Hugh Freeze. Also, Diego Pavia owns Hugh Freeze after Saturday. So the more interesting, because Texas, Georgia at the top, right? Tennessee at 7. I suppose those are important because you know that they still consider Tennessee to be behind Penn State. So, and I really don't take issue with that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Tennessee should absolutely be the number 6 team over Penn State. I understand Penn State doesn't have very impressive wins, but that Arkansas loss, it looks worse and worse. Arkansas just had 60 hung on them, or 50, or whatever it was, by Ole Miss over the weekend. So I'm not going to throw a fit about Tennessee being behind one-loss Penn State when Penn State's one loss came at the death against Ohio State, even though Tennessee has a better win in that Alabama game than anything Penn State has on their resume. We'll see how that all plays out. Probably expect both of them to, I guess Penn State you definitely expect to finish 11-1. We know that if Tennessee goes 11-1, they are in, without a shadow of a doubt. The question is, if they were to finish 10-2, would they be in? Tennessee got help over the weekend. Tennessee got help from Texas A&M, getting I don't want to say blown out, but kind of blown out by South Carolina. Tennessee got helped by Clemson, who essentially got eliminated unless they go on a crazy rally and win the ACC when Clemson lost at home to Louisville. Tennessee got help from Iowa State, losing over the weekend. So now it's looking like the Big 12 and the ACC likely will be one-bid leagues. That helps the case of a 10-2 SEC team. So when you look at it, is the SEC more likely to get 3 or 4 teams in? Alabama, LSU, like we talked about, that's going to take care of itself this weekend. Huge game in Baton Rouge. It'll be an electric atmosphere. Loser is out, winner is in, providing they win out against the teams that are supposed to beat down the stretch. Now, here's where it could get interesting. Texas A&M plays Texas at the end of the year. If Texas A&M were to win out at 10-2 with the win over Texas, would they have the best resume of any 10-2 SEC team?
Oh, yeah.
I would think so. With wins over LSU and Texas and the losses coming to Notre Dame and South Carolina on the road.
Yeah.
And if Ole Miss were to beat Georgia this weekend.
Where's that game?
It's in Oxford. So if you're a Tennessee fan, your rooting guide is Ole Miss to lose to Georgia. There's no scenario in which, if you're a Tennessee fan, you want Georgia to lose this weekend. None. None whatsoever.
Sure.
Because you don't want to be playing Georgia coming off a loss. I promise you.
Not after the way that Kirby Smart galvanized, rallied the troops on national television, and rightfully so. That's exactly what he should do.
You absolutely do not want Georgia coming off a loss. And you don't want Georgia being a 10-2 team. You don't want to be a 10-2 team that lost to 10-2 Georgia, because Georgia's going to get in over you, I promise, if Georgia takes that head-to-head. So that's the rooting guide for the next few weeks. But Tennessee did get some help over the course of last weekend. We'll see if they continue to get some this coming weekend.
Who do you trust less right now, Ole Miss or Georgia? Because, and that may seem like a pretty lopsided question.
It's not about trust. It's just about who's a better football team, and that's Georgia.
I think it is about trust, because Carson Beck is not somebody that I trust right now. Carson Beck is, what is the biggest weakness of the Georgia football team?
Haven't been able to run the football very well.
Matters.
Like we are used to Georgia being able to do. And yeah, Carson Beck's been inconsistent.
Inconsistent at the most important position on the road in the SEC gives me pause. Now, I still would trust Kirby Smart and the Georgia football team because, as you say, they are the better football team in that spot to go and take care of business against an Ole Miss team that's fallen pretty short of expectation. We should be talking about them as I mean, we shouldn't because their season hasn't played out the way that it is. But the expectation was to be talking about Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin vying for a national championship in the inaugural 12-team college football playoff, and they have squandered that to date. I don't know what Lane is going to have dialed up for Kirby's defense. I don't know if it's going to matter because Kirby and that Georgia defense still find ways to suffocate even the best offenses in the country. But there's something about Jackson Dart and Carson Beck that makes me think it's not as big a layup as I want to make it in my head, Georgia over Ole Miss.
Yeah, no, I don't think any of these matchups are layups anymore. We're kind of past that. There's not a lot of layups in college football now when you're talking about two teams in the playoff picture. But I see what you're saying. I wonder how much you're influenced by Jackson Dart being phenomenal in a game where they hung 50 against Arkansas, who obviously shut down Tennessee's offense a few weeks ago.
Well, I used to be able to do the transitive property in college football, but it doesn't really work that way in college football anymore.
Doesn't apply right now. Ole Miss has, for the last couple of years, to Lane Kiffin's credit, got themselves to kind of a 10-2 standard, but running into the likes of Georgia and Alabama, and not even really being competitive in those games, especially against Georgia. Ole Miss had a very pointed objective in the offseason, and that was to get better in the trenches. In his words, look better getting off the bus, right? And they've slipped up. They slip up at home to Kentucky, which is a very bad loss, looking back at it now. And they lose in overtime in Baton Rouge, which quality win, looking back on it. But I trust Georgia. I trust Kirby Smart infinitely more than I do Ole Miss right now from the sample size that we've seen this year. Because, yes, Georgia's had their issues. Their only loss came to one of, if not the most purely talented teams in the country in Alabama, when Alabama had probably the best single half that any college football team will play all season.
Yeah, sure.
And Georgia still was able to come back and make that a game. And then obviously the win against Texas is one of the best wins in all of college football this year.
More a statement on the Alabama defense in the second half than it was on Georgia. But Georgia did, make it at least a fight.
So that's an important game this weekend. Texas hosting pesky Florida, who did give Georgia a game just last weekend.
Is Billy Napier going to save his job?
He just might. You got to give them credit. They're fighting right now.
That's what I'm saying. They look competitive, and they're not winning, obviously, but they're not hopeless.
Yeah.
They're not outright hopeless. DJ Lagway, what's the situation with him?
Injury situation?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the latest. I guess we'll see the availability reports later this week, but it seems like he will likely play this weekend, but I'm not sure. He did have a hamstring issue, which could come back around. One more to add to the rooting guide. Tennessee fans, you want Alabama to win Saturday. I know it's hard. It's hard to root for Alabama in these type of big games, especially when you don't have any major beef with LSU. But you want Alabama to win. You need that win to look as good as humanly possible. And it would help. It would help Tennessee for Alabama to win in Baton Rouge and probably win out and finish 10-2.
Do I have things to give away next?
You do. 2 tickets to see Jelly Roll, 11/26 at Bridgestone Arena.
All right. If you want the opportunity to see the hometown kid, Jelly Roll, at Bridgestone Arena, all you have to do is call us, 615-737-1045, and tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is.
11:02. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The first college football playoff rankings of 2024 came out on Tuesday. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, and Texas make up the top 5. Tennessee coming in at number 7, one spot behind Penn State and one spot ahead of undefeated Indiana. Undefeated BYU, who leads the Big 12 standings, ranks 9th. The NFL trade deadline passed Tuesday afternoon. The Detroit Lions added pass rusher Zadarius Smith in a trade with Cleveland as he comes in to fill the role of injured edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson. The Steelers acquired pass rusher Preston Smith in a trade with the Packers. And the Commanders traded for Saints cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. Titans did not make any trades yesterday, but the team is reportedly signing veteran safety Mike Edwards. According to Jeremy Fowler, the 28-year-old was released by Buffalo on Tuesday. Titans on the practice field today, getting ready to travel to the Chargers on Sunday. Head coach Brian Callahan meets with the media at noon. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
That's right. 615-737-1045 is the number. You call in. You give us the dumbest thing in sports this week. We'll give you 2 tickets to see Jelly Roll. His upcoming concert here locally at Bridgestone Arena. It's on November the 26th, Jackson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Concise.
To the point.
615-737-1045 is the number. Tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. All right. So did you see what happened to Jason Kelce by way of Travis Kelce this weekend?
Yep.
The dumbest thing in sports this week is people who chase clout. Now, I say this full well knowing that Lucas has oftentimes in our relationship together accused me of being a clout chaser. Correctly so. But there are different kinds of clout chasing that I think need to be pointed out here. There is a person, and I don't know the age, but Jason is in town for Penn State, Ohio State. Game day's there. There were game day, big noon kickoff, not collab. They weren't working together, but they were both at the same games. Big show, big game, down to the wire, all the things.
For an 11 a.m. kick. Yeah.
Yeah.
You go on.
Sure. Jason Kelce in attendance. So somebody is following Jason Kelce, walking from wherever Jason Kelce is tailgating to wherever Jason Kelce is going. And he's got a phone on Jason Kelce, and he's talking smack to Jason Kelce about his brother Travis, because brother Travis, of course, dates Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has been polarizing in the news as of late, certainly with the political situations that various people have declared themselves for, so I assume it has something to do with that, and he's calling Jason Kelce a gay slur. He's calling Travis Kelce a gay slur and saying, how does it feel to know that your brother's the gay slur, okay? So, stupid to do that to an NFL player. Also terrible to use that kind of language. Now, the problem with Jason Kelce is he has a, pretty typical football player moment. Blacks out, goes full rage. Honestly, the guy that's heckling Jason Kelce is lucky that he didn't just get obliterated physically. Though I'm sure there would have been a lawsuit as a result. Takes the cell phone out of the kid's hand because the kid's just trying to get a reaction from Jason Kelce. Takes the phone out of the kid's hand. Gronk spikes it and says, "Who's the gay slur now?" Except he also uses the gay slur, which is an unfortunate situation. But still, the state of society where people are comfortable heckling anybody just for the sake of going viral on TikTok or whatever platform you choose. Now, obviously, it got the traction that it got, and the kid probably got a new cell phone, and I don't know if there's a settlement type of situation that has to take place there, but it just makes me sad. It makes me angry that people are that stupid, and that people who are that stupid get rewarded with the kind of payoff that he's looking for without physical harm coming their way.
And the video came from like a passerby.
Yeah.
Right? The video didn't come from the kid that was trying to take the video. And Kelce apologized on the Monday Night Football pregame set this week and apologized for greeting. I think the way he put it was greeting hate with hate.
Yes.
I will say,
Which I appreciate.
Watching him spike the phone was very satisfying.
Not as satisfying as I wish he would have punched that guy in the face.
I feel like that's better, though. I feel like bodily harm, that's when it can very easily get swung back on you, and then the kid can sue, and the kid gets all the clout from it.
I would have paid the money to punch that kid in the face. It's like Troy Aikman. You remember that line from Troy Aikman a couple years ago when he asked his lawyers how much money it would cost to punch Skip Bayless in the face? And the lawyer said $5 million, and Troy said if they'd have told me $1 million, I'd have done it. By the way, you see Skip Bayless got hacked yesterday?
No.
Woo!
Oh,
Tough scene for the Lake Show.
I like the response of just taking the phone and spiking it, throwing it into a river or something. But yeah, that's a good one.
I hope those kids' parents are proud. What's your dumbest thing in sports this week?
Jackson, do you have something?
mine.
You don't have anything? What's wrong?
Mine is the Skip Bayless getting hacked.
Oh, that was his dumbest thing in sports.
It is a tough scene. You saw it, right?
I saw it.
Just tweeting hateful things from his account.
Very hateful things. A lot of N-words from Skip Bayless's Twitter account.
Every word in the book.
I missed that.
You're not supposed to say. Tweeted at Skip Bayless from Skip Bayless's account.
Yes,
Skip Bayless, big Cowboys fan, right?
Yep.
Dallas Cowboys, the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Oh, look at that.
The Cowboys acquire Carolina wide receiver Jonathan Mingo and a 2025 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2025 4th-round pick. Mingo, the second-year receiver who has 12 catches for 121 yards midway through the season. The Chiefs acquired DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round pick. The Ravens acquired Deontay Johnson for a 5th-round pick. The Steelers acquired Mike Williams for a 5th-round pick. All more accomplished, higher-impact players than Jonathan Mingo, who I imagine most football fans completely forgot about since he was drafted by the Panthers out of Ole Miss. Now, Mingo, a younger player, maybe a higher upside player, but this clearly was a desperation move by the Dallas Cowboys, and everybody is pointing and laughing at them, Stephen A. smile, and for good reason. Or Stephen A. style, I should say, with
Also
a smile.
Big smile from Stephen A., I'm sure, this morning. CeeDee Lamb is hurt. Dak Prescott is on injured reserve. Why are you giving up a 4th-round pick for former second? No, they traded a 4th-round pick.
Oh, it was a 4th.
It was a 4th. Again,
I just read that. It was a 4th. It's just even worse. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it makes it even dumber. The Cowboys are going nowhere. Even if they scrounge back into, meaningful competitiveness with Cooper Rush, who I assume is going to be the backup quarterback now, like the Eagles and the Commies are, they're not within grasping distance of you. I mean, maybe they are by record, but still, like you're not getting back into the NFC East race there. So, yes, Jerry making emotional decisions to try and salvage, I guess, some semblance of goodwill with the fan base only does himself more harm than good. And the Carolina Panthers do something right. Carolina's saying, look at us. We're not the laughing stock. It's them. They're the dumb ones. They traded with us. 615-737-1045, the number. What is the dumbest thing in sports this week? Let's go to James up first.
Yeah, I just thought that it was pretty dumb for the fans of the Titans to want them to lose out. We need our guys to be out on the field and playing, and they need to play to get money from another team if we can't give them the money they want. That's just my thought.
No, I agree. Thanks for the call, James. Remember to stay on hold for the opportunity to win those tickets because Jackson will have to get back in touch with you. People that advocate actively for tanking are displaying dumb behavior. I won't call you dumb outright, but I think it is ignorant more than it is dumb. Tyler next.
Hey, guys. My dumbest thing in sports actually also part of the Jason Kelce situation. I will say, though, that one of the new updates that's come out is that the Penn State police are investigating the situation.
Did see that.
And if Jason faces any kind of legal liability for that, that's just really dumb. I mean, that whole situation's dumb. So.
Agreed. It is as dumb a situation as I've seen this week. I don't know. I guess I don't know specifically of what they're investigating, but I suppose we'll find out here in the very near future. Brandon up next. Hey, Brandon.
Yeah.
What you got?
I just thought Billy Napier, I think it's time for him to go. I just don't see how he saves his job at this point. So people thinking that he could, I think it's kind of dumb.
Well, I mean, there's evidence there that he might. What's his buyout? Do you know offhand?
Not off the top of my head.
So Billy Napier felt like the most fired college football coach in America for a good portion of the college football season. And again, they haven't turned their season around, but they've been pesky, right? They're annoying even if they lose at the end.
Over 20 mil. 26. Which used to be astronomical, by the way. Like 5 years ago, that was an astronomical buyout.
Jimbo really broke the mold.
Yeah, like Auburn fired Gus Malzahn and paid him like $21 million, and everybody was like, "Oh my goodness!" Yeah, Jimbo really broke the mold on that one.
Yeah, I remember that.
It is. I mean, you look at his record next to Dan Mullen; it's worse at this point. He's coached at Florida now about the same amount of time that Mullen, and they cut Mullen loose, but. They're showing fight, man. I mean, they're playing hard for him. The recruiting is kind of kept together, and they've got a fun young quarterback. If there's anything that can save a coach on the hot seat, it's that.
They can't have Kurt Cignetti. Can't have him.
Gators might be calling.
Oh, they'll for sure call. I just don't think he'd do it.
I don't think it's a slam dunk that he would.
No, for sure not a slam dunk.
No.
I read Rexrod has been texting me, pestering me about reading the profile that he wrote on Kurt Cignetti, the Indiana coach, in the Athletic from like 2 weeks ago. This was before the Nebraska game. And I don't know, maybe it's just romanticizing a guy that actually wants to try and win at a place where nobody has ever won meaningfully. But the dude does not seem wired like he's just going to take the next payday and jump for the next job. Anybody that coaches at Indiana of Pennsylvania for a meaningful stretch of time just to redeem his family name is wired different.
Hey, man, stay there and build something.
In the Big Ten, you can.
Yeah, and they can pony up the money that Florida would pony up.
They have, like, Indiana just hasn't had a reason to spend it on anything but basketball. Logan is next. What's up, Logan?
Hey, man. Yeah, I was going to say that Dak getting caught on national television saying that his team bleeping sucked. That'd have to be mine.
Dak, he said?
Oh. Yeah, the lip readers were all over Dak on that one.
But we don't know for sure what he said.
It looked like he said that on the sideline.
I don't know. He's on a bad football team. He's saying the same things that his fans are saying.
By the way, quick honorable mention to Mike Gundy for the dumbest thing in sports this week for going on a rant where he said, quote, "In most cases, the people who are negative and voicing their opinions are the same ones who can't pay their own bills. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of their own family." When talking about negativity around the Oklahoma State program.
Is he just talking about media, or is he talking about like fans?
Fan negativity for a team that was picked to win the Big 12 and started 0-5 in conference play. They might be 0-6 now. I haven't checked.
Oh, no.
But no, it's Mike Gundy posting his apology statement in a screenshot on Twitter at 9:30 p.m. on election night. That's the dumbest thing in sports this week. Quickly saying, "I apologize to those who my comments during Monday's media call offended. My intent was not to offend any of our fans who have supported us in this program throughout the years, and nobody saw it."
Well, they might have at 9:30. Things didn't really get spicy last night until about 11 o'clock, it felt like.
Very cheeky by Mike Gundy.
Yeah, it was funny.
Who do we give the tickets to?
James, Tyler, Brandon, or Logan. They weren't overwhelmingly strong submissions, I will say, this week. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give the tickets away just because we weren't in love with any one submission, because there were plenty of dumb things to pick from this week.
Yeah, I think fans actively wanting their team to try to lose is always a good submission, and that's what James had.
All right. Congratulations to James. Because you are anti-tanking, we reward anti-tanking sentiment around here. You get 2 tickets to go see Jelly Roll at Bridgestone Arena on November the 26th. Should be a great show. I'm sure the hometown boy will put on a great performance for all involved. God knows who he is going to bring out on stage with him. So you can enjoy that concert, and Jackson will contact you shortly. Coming up next, David Ubben of The Athletic will join us. The initial college football playoff rankings for the inaugural 12-team playoff came out last night. We'll get Ubben's perspective next. The Tennessee Men's Clinic takes pride in helping guys who feel like they've lost hope. If the pills stop working, I love to hear success stories, but I hate to hear that guys live for any amount of time feeling like all hope is lost when it comes to treating ED. There are so many misconceptions out there about treating ED, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic can debunk those for you. Lots of men assume that if the pills stop working, they have no other options than irreversible surgery to treat ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to a doctor to get treatment, those may be the only protocols that they have available to you. Do not go through irreversible surgery before you talk to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They specialize in men's sexual health. It's all they do, and it makes them the experts in the field. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone to ED, treatments that increase size and stamina, and everything else in between. The bottom line is no one has more expertise and experience in the field than the Tennessee Men's Clinic, and they are passionate about what they do. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. College football playoff, initial college football playoff rankings come out last night. There is debate as it is expected. David Ubben of The Athletic here to make sense of it all for us now on 104.5 The Zone. David, great to have you. Great to hear from you. Great to see you on this Wednesday.
I don't really want to be tasked with making sense of the college football playoff rankings. In perpetuity, maybe today. This is relatively tame, but I don't know if I'm ready to carry that weight, guys.
Okay, maybe a lot of pressure to put on David Ubben right out of the gate.
It's a heavy burden.
That's my bad. But I will say, Lucas was posing questions because we have now a vested interest. Obviously, we have a vested interest in the college football playoff regardless. And obviously, given that the vast majority of people within the sound of our voices are Tennessee fans, there is a vested interest there as well. But they would host my alma mater right now, Indiana. So there's a lot of smack talk going on, and we're trying to figure out whether the committee will show any level of consistency in how they assign value to wins and losses moving forward based on the way that they've stacked teams like Penn State, Indiana, and Tennessee, respectively.
No, I think talk about the eye test or just we think this team is better. But why is Penn State ahead of Indiana? Why is BYU behind Tennessee? All this stuff, a lot of stuff just doesn't really add up if you look at trying to assess these things. And I think it's just as simple as, well, is Penn State a better roster than Indiana? Probably. Would they beat Indiana? Maybe. Would Tennessee beat BYU? Probably, maybe. And that is where you get into the tension of how much do resumes matter? How much do what we think of the teams matter? Because at this point, I made the point on our reaction show last night, Indiana, I get the schedule concerns. I think they're fair. They haven't played anybody. But if you put Buckeye stickers on their helmets and you line them up and you put that schedule on Ohio State's roster or on Ohio State rather than Indiana, I don't know that they would be number 2 or number 3. They wouldn't be number 8. And if you think anything else, that's crazy to me.
David Ubben of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking college football playoff. You can also check out the podcast until Saturday for all your college football needs and questions.
So, David, it is easy to say that BYU should have the biggest beef, but I also look at BYU's schedule, and I know that the rivalry game against Utah could go either way on Saturday. It could get weird at Utah. But if they win out and win the Big 12, they'll be an undefeated conference champ, and they'll be one of the top 4 seeds, regardless of where the committee ranks them now. So there is an element to this that BYU could just make it not matter, right?
In theory, but they have 2 top 25 wins, one of the best wins of the season at SMU that they probably should get more credit for, considering that's a road win against what is a top 15 team right now. And they've been pretty good with game control. Oklahoma State's the only game that they really needed a ton of help to win. It's just crazy to me that they're not getting any more love. And I think, too, it's not even that they have to win out to get that bye. But if they drop a game along the way, Boise State's close enough to them that if they win out and still win the Big 12, there's a pretty decent shot they're going to not get that bye, and Boise's going to get that number 4 spot, and BYU would be stuck at the 6, 7, 8 seed somewhere along there.
So as we know, the committee for the college football playoff, always very concise and consistent, right? So, David, if I am to see that Tennessee with 1 loss is currently ranked above Indiana, then I would take that to mean if Tennessee were to lose a close game to Georgia and Indiana were to lose a close game to Ohio State, that wouldn't change, right? That 10-2 Tennessee would still finish above 11-1 Indiana. That's what consistency would be, right, David?
I think that's true. I think that's probably what we will see. I think committee generally does a really good job. But I think trying to rationalize some of the decisions and putting the chair, you have to have some level of transparency. You got to put the chairman out there. But a lot of what the chairman has said for 10 years of this, just it hurts them and it hurts their credibility when on what they actually do, they get a lot more right than wrong. And I think generally the only decision that I still have beef with is the Florida State decision. The Ohio State decision over TCU and Baylor in 2014. I mean, it's kind of a coin flip, and when that team that you pick wins the national title, you kind of get to flop that trump card down. So, I don't have any big picture beefs with the committee, but week to week, they do things that are weird, and the rationalization of those things doesn't always make sense. Ward Manuel last night talking about on the media conference call that like they don't penalize teams for injuries. It's just the team is the team. Like, tell that to the Florida State folks. That's just not the case. So, generally they get things right, but I think now so many more factors rather than just picking 4 teams. Okay, well, who gets those buys? Who gets to host games? Who gets in? There's so many lines of demarcation that there's so many more points for that inconsistency to show, when really their main job was picking 4 teams. They've done that pretty well. Their job's a lot harder now. So good luck to you. I still don't know why people do it.
BYU in this equation is an interesting one because if I'm not mistaken, they were one of the, at least projected to be one of the worst teams in the Big 12 this year, and obviously they've turned those fortunes on its head. Which fan base is the happiest today about the initial college football playoff rankings? Because I do think that there's a case for BYU. Lucas looked at me sideways like they should be pissed about their slot.
They should be. I don't know what you're talking about. But, I think honestly, if you look at it, Penn State should feel pretty good that they're not really being penalized for that loss. Alabama, as soon as I saw Missouri show up in the top 25, which I thought was kind of an iffy decision either way, I thought it could go both ways. As soon as I saw Missouri, I was like, Bama's golden. Bama is going to be boosted by that win because they have 2 top 10 wins, and they have the best win probably on that with the win over Georgia. Oregon, maybe you could make a case for them as well. But so I would probably point to those teams, probably Penn State to me and Alabama. Just that Alabama, I think people thought they had a pretty good, decent shot to get in if they won out, and whether or not they got to Atlanta or not. But now it's very clear that, keep winning and the playoff is yours if you're Alabama. I think right now, Austin Mock does some models for us. I think Alabama has a 53% chance of winning. If you look at the rest of their schedule, if they beat LSU on Saturday night, and I'll be there for that game, I can't wait to see that, it's going to be like 80%. Like, Bama's in if they win on Saturday. So it's going to be interesting.
Which fan base should be the most upset today?
I'd be upset if I was BYU. Probably BYU. I think with Indiana, there's some fair points that I don't know how much it matters, but I think what you did with Indiana and BYU is, for one, I think that there's no question that the brand bias is creeping in there. And for 2, their margin for error is pretty small. If they lose any game, maybe they still get in, but you're going to be penalized for it. And BYU, they might win the Big 12. They're certainly in that driver's seat right now, but there's no guarantees. A lot can happen. BYU is not necessarily an elite team. And so their margin for error of both of those schools is really, really small. And so I would probably point to them. In terms of teams that should be happy, I did forget Boise. Boise's sitting there at 12. I couldn't believe that. I thought Boise might be sitting there at like 20. But it's clear that the committee was impressed, 1, with the Oregon loss. They're getting credit for the Oregon loss, which they should. And 2, shout out to Wazoo. Wazoo single-handedly boosting Boise's resume, showing up in the top 25. That's a solid win for them. And UNLV is, those numbers are probably doing pretty well for them too, even though they're not in the top 25. So the schedule metrics were benefiting them.
At David Ubben is where you can follow him to keep up with all his college football coverage. As he said, he'll be there for Alabama LSU this weekend. You can also read him at theathletic.com.
David, doesn't Saturday's game, Alabama and LSU, feel like such a good symbol of why anti-expansion folks were wrong? Because they looked at that game last year and said, see, that game was a playoff game. It just didn't have the sponsor logos and it wasn't in a neutral site. That's what we lose with the 12-team playoff. And now here we are a year later with Alabama taking on LSU, very much in an elimination game for the 12-team college football playoff.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want. I like it because you have more games that are more relevant. We're sitting here, it's November 6th. We still have 30, 35 teams that could conceivably get in the playoff. The conference races really matter. There's a ton at stake in those conference races. But for me, we're kind of seeing the 2 sides of the coin, okay? Because if you don't like the 12-team playoff, you can look at last week and say, oh, Penn State, Oklahoma, or Penn State, Ohio State. That game, the outcome didn't really matter. And there's some truth to that. Like, both those teams are probably getting in the playoff. that game was for seeding, all that stuff. And, initially, in most seasons, that loss for Penn State is probably a death sentence for the season. Why do we want to give out death sentences for seasons in November, though? Like, I like more relevant games. I like games that are going to impact the championship. I don't like to get to November and you look at Saturday and there's 2 games that matter. I want there to be like 10 games that really matter. And I like it. You're trading, to me, you're taking some of the stakes that would be in those big time games, the Oregon, Ohio States, the Penn State, Ohio State. You're taking some of that. You're draining a little bit of relevance out of it, but you're spreading it out to so many more games and so many more races, to say nothing of the G5 race, which has been pretty interesting. And, that's going to be relevant. There's just so many more games. So for somebody like me who, I'm one of the sickos that like all 134, I try to watch, I try to consume. Like, I like all of those leagues and it's all good football to me. It's awesome. And, but if you only care about your team and check in on the playoffs, I can see why you wouldn't like it. But for me, I thought I would be pro 12-team playoff, but I kind of wanted to come into the season with an open mind. I've loved it personally.
You're obviously in Knoxville. I know you said you're covering Bama LSU Saturday. That's going to be an electric atmosphere. But you were covering Tennessee Alabama a few weeks ago. You're there. You're close to Tennessee fans and next to that program. With the last few weeks, it's just been so close, right? It's Nico making a couple overthrows. On Saturday, it was receivers dropping touchdowns. Feels like Tennessee is just that close to really breaking a game open like we saw them do almost routinely in 2022. What is your level of confidence at this point that we will see Tennessee do that at some point this season and be able to do that in a meaningful game like against Georgia?
Good question. Tennessee's been a weird team this year because the defense has been so dominant and kept them in games. But the offense, like I said, the Bama game, the offense in the first half was kind of weird. There's some really fluky stuff. The kicking issues, I don't think enough people are talking about that. That's been kind of crazy to see. But like Dylan Sampson gets like a weird fumble when he's got the ball high and tight as a guy who does not fumble, and he fumbles on the opening drive of that Bama game coming off of that turnover. And it's been weird to see. Like, Arkansas is the only team that really kind of shut them down and earned that 0 on the scoreboard going in. It's been a lot of self-inflicted mistakes beyond that. And it's been weird. I think you look at Tennessee sometimes and you're like, these guys can beat almost anybody. And you look at them other times, you say, I don't know that they can beat anybody. So Tennessee's a weird team and had a kind of a weird season. But ultimately, when you have a roster that's the quality of Tennessee's, that there is always that thought of like, well, if this team kind of kicks it in high gear and peaks at the right time, I mean, you start looking around, there's nobody that they can't beat.
In terms of interest level, Alabama and LSU is at the top of the heap this week, obviously. But I'm curious your thoughts on this Georgia-Ole Miss game for a variety of different reasons. Carson Beck's inconsistencies and the turnovers are the biggest reason that anybody would be shorting Georgia stock right now. But I really don't know what to make of Ole Miss either this year, especially coming off such a spectacular performance by Jackson Dart. What do you make of this game from a matchup standpoint?
Well, I think, these are 2 teams that are really good on the lines. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm playing the same note a lot when it comes to teams that I like. I like continuity. I like line play. You look at Ole Miss, they got a lot of both of those things. They're really good on both lines. Their offensive line's had some rough days. Their defensive line is really good. And if they can get after Carson Beck and force him into some of those mistakes, 11 picks in 5 games. I think Carson Beck can figure it out. We've seen a lot more good football of him than we have bad, like we've seen in the last month. It's been kind of confounding in a lot of ways. Getting Tate Ratledge back to full strength would probably help him and the running game, which kind of helps everything a little bit. But for me, it's kind of a put up or shut up time for Ole Miss. That Kentucky loss put them behind the 8 ball. Lane Kiffin is 0-5 against Alabama and Georgia, and some of those games have not been close. We thought they were going to put up a fight against Georgia last year. They got punked pretty good the second half. I think they scored 3 points in the second half against Bama last year, and had that game in 2021, the get your popcorn ready game. They're losing 28 at half. So it's not even that they've lost these games. When they've had good teams, 10, 11 win games, they haven't been competitive against Alabama and Georgia. And so on paper, you look at these teams, I'd say, yeah, Ole Miss can win this game. They can compete in this game. History tells you that they can't. So, I think it'll be interesting to see how much history plays a factor here. And if there's something to the idea that Lane Kiffin, when he gets in these games against teams with a little more talent that aren't they're playing up a little bit, if that does affect how they coach and how his teams perform, because in the past it seems like it has.
Until Saturday is the podcast. TheAthletic.com, of course, is where you can read everything that he writes. At David Ubben for his coverage of LSU, Alabama, and everything in between, en route to the college football playoff that we are all closely monitoring here moving forward. David, always good to chat with you. Thank you for the insight. We appreciate it, buddy. Have fun this weekend.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Anytime.
David Ubben there with us on 104.5 The Zone. So a lot to digest there. Also, digesting the trade deadline, what was done, and more importantly, locally, what was not done. We'll talk about all those things coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So, David Ubben with some really good information, helping us kind of work our way through all the different paths to the playoff for a couple of these programs that are competing, vying, trying to jockey their position, how teams should feel today. Now, he said, I don't know what you're talking about when I brought up BYU, when really I was just trying to tee him up for what he wrote about last night, which is basically looking at theathletic.com, the first college football playoff rankings deliver surprises. Teams most likely to be elated or furious. He has in the category of feeling pleased the BYU Cougars, which is why I was trying to get him to make the argument for that.
That he wrote before the ranking.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. Before the ranking. Teams most likely, fan bases most likely to feel elated. Right?
No. This is the college football playoff reaction column, easy for me to say, that he put out last night. This is not before the ranking.
And he wrote, BYU fans should be happy?
Yeah. Indiana feeling pleased. BYU feeling pleased. Notre Dame feeling pleased. Bones to pick. Boise State, Tennessee, the ACC, and Army and Washington State.
No, I think BYU fans should be upset. Their resume is better than
No, I understood his logic. It's just it ran counter to what I read.
I hear what you're saying. Well, it doesn't matter if they win out and win the Big 12 because they'll be a top 4 seed.
Yeah.
But if they catch a loss, like he was saying, it's very feasible that Boise could jump them as one of the 4 best conference champs. And then BYU is left out of that first round bye. So that game this weekend, Utah and BYU, the Holy War, one of the coolest rivalries in college football, could get spicy on Saturday.
So from college football playoff rankings, which are fun, to the trade deadline, which was all right. There's some stuff that happened, nothing locally. But I don't know. I don't really know what Titans fans wanted out of yesterday, right? Because you were out sick. I'm glad you are feeling better, right? You didn't come in here bearing disease, did you?
Cough on him.
The road to recovery.
Cough on him? What do you mean? You're back there in the room that literally contains sickness.
If there's any biological warfare, it's coming from whoever comes out of that room.
That's tough for me.
Which is why Bert tried to sneak in here today. But I don't know what Titans fans went out of the trade deadline because we had some mixed reactions. Sell the farm. And then I had people calling in yesterday, and again, it's not a representative sample size to have one caller and to react off that one caller, but people saying, yeah, they should trade for a right tackle and try and get this thing back up off the mat. And I was like, okay, I guess, but I'm just trying to marry the reality of their situation with the reality of their roster and try and figure out where Titans fans are from a mental standpoint with their team. Like, are we realistic about the situation? What does that realism look like? Are you optimistic because they beat a bad team and you are a bad team, you beat a bad team? That can help propel you. It does nothing. There's not a single solitary thing other than Jim Harbaugh stopping you from going 3-6 after, getting to 2-6. So perhaps there is reason to believe that there could be something here. Every AFC South team lost this weekend besides the Titans, right? Jags lost, Texans lost, Colts lost. Yes.
Yeah.
So Titans fans get the one weekend to point at the other 3 franchises and be like, you suck, not us this week. Now you have to do it again. But for the trade deadline, the reality of the situation was they had things that they wanted to move, and they couldn't move them because nobody else wanted them for the prices that were on offer. And that can be the most realistic way to grasp what was done or not done specifically on deadline day. The best cards that they had to play were flipping Ernest Jones from a 5th and 6 to a 4th, which is what they did by transitive property with the Rams, trading for Ernest Jones, then trading him to the Seattle Seahawks, getting back Jerome Baker, who hasn't really, he hasn't factored in yet. We'll see whether that matters or not. But the pick does matter. The Hopkins thing, you understood. It's fair to expect that the Kansas City Chiefs might be back in the Super Bowl, which makes the conditions on that less offensive. The Ravens, the Bills, the Steelers will try and knock them out of that spot in the AFC Championship game. We'll see if anybody's successful. And he's going to play 60% of the snaps as long as he's healthy.
Seems that way.
8 catches, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. Remember the Titan celebration, all of it.
You talk about his performance yesterday when I was gone?
I did.
He was phenomenal.
He was excellent.
Yeah.
Turns out still good.
Still a good football player.
Which makes me, by the way, I didn't spend much time on this yesterday, but it pisses me off at this coaching staff even more that you couldn't figure out how to utilize DeAndre Hopkins. And I know that Mahomes is the only person on that, what was it, a 45, 46-yard reception that he had early in the game. Like, there's one quarterback that puts that ball exactly where it ended up going in DeAndre Hopkins' hands. And DeAndre Hopkins is still what he may be from an athleticism, jumping, running standpoint, whatever. He still has the most reliable hands, arguably, of any wide receiver in professional football. You can make the case for Jamar or Justin Jefferson or whomever, but I'd put Hopkins' reliability with his hands up there among any of them.
But I also feel like the window of DeAndre Hopkins between coming off the knee injury and the Titans having the mindset of probably moving him was really small. I mean, he was banged up early in the year. He was not 100% until, I don't know at what point we would say that he was fully fit, 100% off the knee injury. And then you started to transition into a period where they're going to move him. Like the Titans, I know Brian Callahan said leg soreness, but fourth quarter getting blown out against Buffalo, they move him 2 days later?
Yeah.
Right? So
he told us he was fine after week 2.
Sure.
Or in week 2. He said, I'm healthy. I'm fine.
Quarterback also matters.
Yep.
Calvin Ridley finally had his 2 best performances of the season in the last 2 weeks. I know there were some drops mixed in, but he had 2 big performances in the last 2 weeks. Who was the quarterback?
Mason Rudolph. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, I'm irritated with a great many things about the way that this season has gone or not gone. But I do think that there is equal parts blame on coaching staff for not being able to figure it out and quarterbacks for not being able to get the job done that make DeAndre Hopkins, look pedestrian when he is very much not at this stage of his career, which is why I'm glad to see him succeeding in Kansas City. But the point is about this team and the trade deadline. There is no reason that Sebastian Joseph Day should still be on this roster. There's not a single one there's not a justification that you can make to me. Like the logic that would be given, maybe Callahan will be asked about that today, is that, it might impact the locker room if we move a quality guy, a quality veteran, somebody who's been a good soldier and who's, performs and is a contributor on a defense that is the strong point of this year's team, that moving him for a 7th would impact morale. Yeah, okay, morale at 2-6 is what?
Do you know that they had offers for Sebastian Joseph Day?
I know that they had teams interested in Sebastian Joseph Day.
Sure.
I don't know the nature of the offer specifically, so I don't know how bargain basement we're talking.
Yeah, you don't know
if we're talking if it's a 2028 7th or something like that. I don't know.
We don't know if they tried to move him either and did not succeed.
They wanted more. My understanding is that they were not satisfied with the idea of 6ths and 7ths for the kind of players that they had on offer. But it would be tough to argue that Arden Key or Sebastian Joseph Day is worth more than that if you're a team that's buying when you saw the other kind of players, the quality of players that were basically traded for 7ths or 6ths or, future 5ths and things like that. It's a tough spot to be in. But I still would have taken whatever was on offers for Sebastian Joseph Day because he's not going to be here next year. I mean, theoretically, right? They could re-sign him.
They could re-sign
him, but he's on a 1-year deal.
He's had a solid year. He's 29 years old.
All right, he could be a free agent at the end of the year. You can bring him back if you want to, if you feel better about your football team. But I just that logic does not vibe for me about that specific situation. Arden, I get. You probably still need an Arden Key-esque player when you inevitably, when you must draft edge rush, pass rush help, whether it's from the interior, whether it's on the outside. You need a day 1 or day 2 pick spent on a pass rusher this year. Trading Arden Key wouldn't have impacted that. It would just mean that you need to go find a role player in the mold of Arden Key that's not Arden Key if you wanted to move on from him via trade or if you cut him at the end of the year. So that one I get more. The other one that teams were interested in, but of course the Titans were not willing to move, was Jeffrey Simmons. If teams are offering you a 3rd and some change for Jeff, don't do that deal. That I get. That makes sense to me. But the Sebastian Joseph Day thing, I don't know. That ain't it. 615-737-1045, the number if you want to join the conversation. Coming up next, we've been putting off this conversation for 2 days. Do you want to talk about whether that was Nico's best performance as a volunteer quarterback on Saturday?
I think it was.
Okay, let's do it next.
12 o'clock, good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Titans head coach Brian Callahan, currently speaking at the podium with Titans media, said today will be a walkthrough at Titans practice as they continue to monitor some injuries in preparation for Sunday's game at the LA Chargers. Titans did not make any trades at the deadline yesterday, but Jeremy Fowler reporting the Titans are signing veteran safety Mike Edwards. The 28-year-old two-time Super Bowl champ was released by the Bills on Tuesday. The first college football playoff rankings of 2024 came out yesterday. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, and Texas making up the top 5. Tennessee ranked number 7, one spot behind Penn State and one spot ahead of undefeated Indiana. Unbeaten BYU, who leads the Big 12 standings, ranks 9th. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Brian Callahan is at the podium. If he says anything of interest or of note, we will deliver that to you in short order. 615-737-1045, the number. If you want to join the conversation, we would be happy to have your participation there. We have some phone calls to get to at your convenience. We also have the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, where people are accusing one another of being flat earthers, but not for the reason that you might think today after the election, but for reasons of trying to come up with Titans tanking conspiracy theories from as best as I can tell. I try not to look at the chat too often during the radio show because I believe all of you, even though I love you, to be insane.
There's some real galaxy brain stuff going on in the F&M Bank chat today.
Yeah, so I will avoid the dipping into the acid bath of the YouTube chat today, though we will monitor those comments. Lucas will continue to keep the people engaged.
Stimulated.
Throw them some red meat every once in a while. Say, Vrabel was right, and then scurry out of the room or something like that. Doing whatever he needs to do to keep the engagement up on the radio show. In the meantime, Tennessee has what should be a fairly easy game in hand this weekend at Neyland Stadium. 2-7 Mississippi State coming to town. You have now the college football playoff rankings out. I would love for the Vols to do something that involved style points more than just winning. Right now, they opened as a 25-point favorite. It has now been bet down to a paltry 24 over the just terrible Mississippi State Bulldogs this year. It's bad vibes. But I wanted style points out of you last week, and it took a little while for me to get them. But second half, things started to turn. You did get points in the first half, which is progress, if nothing else. And arguably, you got the best performance of Nico Iamaleava's young starting quarterback career, or am I getting too ahead of myself by saying that's the best Nico has looked as of all?
It was. It will not go down as his best performance. He finishes solid, 28 of 38, 292 and 1 touchdown, no turnovers, but it could have been by far his best performance as a Tennessee player. It comes down to 2 plays for me. You could argue 3, because there was one ball over the top to Miles Kitselman, the tight end, who had a great game, by the way, almost 100 yards and a touchdown. But Nico floats it over the top of the formation into the end zone. Kitselman has it in his hands. The crowd is getting up to celebrate. And then a Kentucky defender just makes a great play. Just puts their helmet right on the football, makes a big hit on Kitselman. Ball pops out, incomplete. Tennessee goes on to miss the field goal. So if you want to call that a stone-cold drop by Kitselman, I think that's harsh. So I'm going to put that one to the side. And we can talk about 2 absolute stone-cold drops in the first quarter. Down the right sideline, it's a second down, 48-yard dime to Chris Brazzell. Just nestles into his hands as he is running into the end zone.
That's a great word.
For whatever reason, he leaves his feet. He tries to make this diving, leaping catch in a moment where it is not necessary. And he falls on top of the football, can't control it, and it's incomplete. Nico kind of scrambles out of the pocket, gains a yard on third down. They punt it away. Fast forward to early fourth quarter. where Tennessee is up 3. Kentucky's just scored and gotten the 2-point conversion. And Tennessee's up 3, driving, trying to kill the game off. And this is a 3rd down, perfect throw. Over the middle, threads the needle between 2 Kentucky defenders. Chaz Nimrod has it hit his hands and stone cold drop. There is nobody in his eyesight, in his vision to be able to stop him running all the way to the end zone for what would have been a 68-yard touchdown. So those 2 plays, if Brazel and Nimrod can just catch perfect throws by Nico, you're talking about 30 of 28 for 408 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no turnovers. Nico made 1 bad throw in this game, an ill-advised throw in the second half that probably should have been picked. Kentucky defender couldn't hang on. Otherwise, he was on point. There were no overthrows. He was accurate. He looked like he had a good feel for the game. He was scrambling around, throwing on the move. Nico was excellent on Saturday. But it's just this feeling of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, as not only do you have 2 stone cold drops by Brazel and Nimrod, but Max Gilbert, who's been Mr. Reliable all season, goes 0 for 3 and shanks a 30-yarder way wide left. It was just strange. So there should have been style points on Saturday. I mean, if those 2 receivers just catch those 2 passes, not even counting the Kitzelman one, you're talking about 42 points. And if Gilbert just hits one of those field goals, you're talking about hanging 45 on Kentucky, winning 45-18, and we're all saying, finally, there are the style points we've been looking for. It's just that close to Tennessee really breaking a game open.
Yeah, well, it's frustrating, right? Because it's, I mean, same but different if we want to try and compare Titans and Vols, right? You're shooting yourself in the foot, but this team is surviving shooting itself in the foot.
Right. And that's something that's a place this team has not been in a very, very long time.
Sure, that matters. That's growth. And there's growth from Nico, right? Because he didn't freak out. He's not throwing his hands up in the air when there are drops. It would be easy to do. Again, me personally, working with a very emotive quarterback who expresses his emotions before he can get a handle on himself, good, bad, or indifferent. Nico has that level of calmness that I think translates to a component of leadership. It's not the end-all, be-all for leadership, but it matters.
Not necessarily that dog in him, but that dudeness, some would say.
Nobody's saying this.
Some very smart people.
This has been a month of you trying to get this off the ground.
It was coined by David Ubben when he joined us a few weeks ago ahead of the Oklahoma game.
And if he couldn't get it done, sure as hell you're not going to get it off the ground.
I do think it's perfect. But go on.
I'm so happy you interrupted my point with that meaningful analysis. Not that dog, but some dudeness to him. All right, very good.
He's
Excellent
got it.
work. Yeah, okay, whatever. So, point being, it's the toughest position in football. It's one of the most scrutinized programs in college football. And as a 20-year-old, still learning all the ins and outs, the nuances of the position, and also the offense to an extent, while he's had a year in the offense and the system that you would expect it to be seamless. That's not the way that it works in real life, hardly ever, no matter what it is, whether it's sports, work, personal life, or otherwise. You don't just microwave the results, and that's been kind of the thing that I think Vols fans have wanted, given what they tasted with Hendon Hooker, and they thought might be able to take a step up with Nico, given how much more talented he is. But talent, again, does not connote experience. You have to survive some of these situations before you can experience that level of growth and seamlessness to an offense. I'm gonna try and not get ahead of myself, because it is the best performance that I have seen him personally have. But the key to quarterbacking is consistency first and foremost. So while I acknowledge some things went down in that game that were not his fault, and that he managed the situation anyway and played well anyway, I need to see him do that again against Mississippi State is worse than Texas.
It's the worst
than Kentucky.
It's the worst defense in the SEC, yeah.
Okay, so I would like to see him do that with relative ease in this game. I feel like I'm in reruns anytime I talk about Nico, or anytime I talk about the Titans, but that's a different story, because I feel like I'm looking for the same things. All right, do it again. Just do it again. And I know I can't say that for 3 straight hours and call it a sports talk radio show, but that's basically the summation of my Nico analysis. All right, I like what I saw. I like the progress that he's making. There is legitimate progress that I can discern from watching that player, and the coaching staff is seeing that too. And they're also calling games as a result based on their increased comfort level with Nico and the increased trust that they have in him to be able to operate. But do it again.
It did feel like he carried over the second half from the Alabama game, and that was a positive. He carried over those 2 quarters into a 4-quarter performance against Kentucky. He just didn't get the help. But this defense also did not have its best performance. They gave up 360 yards to a Kentucky offense that has struggled to move the ball all season. 168 rush yards on the ground. It's a season high that Tennessee's given up this year. But again, this was the worst performance by Tennessee's defense in SEC play this year, and they gave up 18 points. And they never felt like they were out of control in this game. So, and credit to Gavin Wimsatt, who came in and threw some dimes when he came in for Brock Vandegrift. The touchdown pass was a phenomenal throw. But you just get this feeling, and we've said it every week, that they're that close. And when it does click into place, when the receivers catch the ball and Max Gilbert's not missing field goals and there's not an uncharacteristic fumble sprinkled in by Dylan Sampson, you think about what this team could be, and it could be something special. I mean, they are 2 to 3 plays away, it feels like, in all of these games from absolutely dusting these teams. So they just got to put it together, and they have a chance to put it together against by far the worst team in the SEC on Saturday at home under the lights. I don't know why Tennessee is only getting night games this year. I guess I'm not terribly upset about it, but I wouldn't mind Mississippi State being a quick 11 a.m. All right, let's get this done, get it out of the way. But whatever, I'll take it.
Oh, the burden.
They'll be under the lights at Georgia,
the burden it must be to be in prime time all the time.
I am confused by the Mississippi State one being a night game, but that's besides the point. They're that close to putting it together in a way that would put them among the best teams in college football in terms of eye test, which the committee has told us matters. Style points matter. Do it on Saturday. Nico, if he can continue on this thread from the second half to the Bama game to Kentucky to Saturday, and receivers just catch the football, and Max Gilbert get back to making field goals regularly, they are so close to being one of the funnest teams to watch, one of the most balanced teams to watch in all of college football. So we'll see if they put it together on Saturday.
615-737-1045, the number. If you would like to chime in on the Vols, you're welcome. Also, speaking of a quarterback who is tasked with putting it together, what happens when the Titans drop Will Levis back into the lineup this weekend, which seems to be on pace to happen? We'll talk about it coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, 615-737-1045. The number, if you want to join the conversation, we'd be happy to have you. What will your expectation of the Titans offense be if Levis returns to the lineup this weekend? Brian Callahan is still giving a press conference, if I'm not mistaken, although he's probably close to wrapping up at this point. Titans back on the practice field today. The expectation is that Will Levis will practice. Jackson informs me in my ear that Brian Callahan's press conference has concluded.
It's a walkthrough today.
Interesting.
Trying to get some guys back to full health. He said they're getting close to opening the window for Chido Awuzie and hoping in the next few weeks, according to Callahan. He also said, this is straight from Jim Wyatt's Twitter account, Callahan hoping the time off has helped Will Levis with perspective. He's had a chance to step back and see things, ways he can get better.
Sure. That could happen. Or he could get out there and try to press because he's been out of the lineup for 3 weeks.
What if he comes in and just throws just has an Atlanta performance? Can we dream a little bit?
We? What do you mean? You've been actively preying on this man's downfall since before they drafted him.
That's something you've been trying to pin on me. Did I want the Titans to draft Will Levis? No. But since the moment he got here, all I've wanted is for Will Levis to be good, for this team to have good quarterback play.
He even wrote him a poem.
I did.
No, he didn't. He had the computer do it. That doesn't count.
Worked very hard.
Are you revoking your poem? Have we come to an official designation on that?
Not revoking the poem.
Also, you have
it's
not
going to look
worn
worse and worse on you if you don't.
Your Kentucky gear. You have not worn yet.
That was on Buck.
Yeah, that is on me. I haven't gotten around.
I have said I will happily. I love Kentucky football.
It's going to be the middle of Georgia week. I'm going to have him decked out in full top to bottom Kentucky blue.
Should we just change it to Georgia?
No, you can't just change the parameters of the bet.
That's not really the parameters. It's really just.
No, all we're doing is changing the color. You've already lost the bet about having to wear the
wearing
opposing
Kentucky
team's
gear.
Yeah, you know what? When we have Ben Jones and Matt Murphy in here at the same time to talk Georgia, I think I will have Lucas dressed.
You will bring the Kentucky gear.
I'm sure Murphy has a lot of Georgia gear Lucas can wear.
If he takes me along with him in his apparent suite situation he's got in Athens, then I'll wear his Georgia gear. No, I won't. That's a lie. You should have brought the Kentucky gear. I would have happily worn it Monday and professed my appreciation for Kentucky's football program.
So, with all that being said, I mean, do I think there's a likelihood that they drop him back into the lineup and he goes lights out, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 300 plus yards passing? No, I would probably bet against that if I had to guess. Perspective for Will Levis. Is it just the decisions? Like, is he just talking about the bonehead stuff? Because, like, what else does Will Levis need perspective on? They told the guy to be himself. All he's done is be himself. This new Will Levis, there's no new Will Levis. This is Will Levis. Like, from top to bottom, the person, the player, this has been, I don't know, I think a fairly consistent sample size of who this individual is. So what are you asking him to have perspective on? I don't understand.
Who he is right now. It doesn't mean he's a finished product right now, but they need, for what he is right now, they need an answer right now.
So what, but that doesn't, like, what, be perspective on the person that you're aspiring to be, or have perspective on the person that you aspire to be? No, just see the game
from a different angle. I don't know, man. It's just something you say when a guy's been sidelined for a few weeks.
No. It's not. No. Get out of here with it's just something you say. That's unacceptable to me. All these words have meaning. Like, I get that they're 2-6, and you can shrug your shoulders if you want to and say, no, it's just something you say. No. Because Colt Anderson getting up there and saying, well, we have an effort problem, and then going back and saying, no, well, they play with like they've got their hair out. No, your words matter.
Yeah, well, that was at the contradictory and different, yes. But to nitpick Brian Callahan for saying he hopes Will Levis got some perspective.
I'm not nitpicking. I'm trying to understand what he's asking him to have perspective on. It's simply a question. Now, I don't know that the follow-up was asked. I wasn't at the press conference. We're sitting here doing a radio show.
Yeah, so I don't know if it would help. Watching Mason Rudolph move the ball effectively for the first time this season with this offense, watching Calvin Ridley get going for the first time this season in these last 2 games, I don't know if it would help. But I guess there's a hope there that Levis, watching from the sideline, can come in with a more measured approach. I don't know. I have as little answers as you do.
So we'll hear from Brian Callahan on Will Levis here in just a second. But let me just answer my own question here. What would my expectation of the Titans offense be if Levis comes back into the lineup? I would expect it to be what it was. I would expect it to be less than 2 touchdowns per game. I would expect it to be disjointed. I would expect it to be rustier than it has been because Mason Rudolph finally finds a flow and then you're going to pull him. I would expect it to be not satisfactory. That is my expectation. Now, can he exceed my expectations? Please, God. You are more than welcome. I invite you to exceed how low you have dropped my level of expectation based on performance. If Will Levis goes out there and starts the game, I expect it to be the 11th straight game that they have an interception in. I expect it to be a game that, can be close for a period of time until the turnovers ultimately undermine them. And I have reason to believe that it will be harder to affect the quarterback in Los Angeles as it was at home against the Patriots this week because the Chargers have a better offensive line. And again, I would invite Jeff Simmons to also do what he did against the Patriots because that changed the game. That affected the game. That caused, whether he got the sack or not, and he did get his 3rd sack of the season, but just disrupting the quarterback led to turnovers. But my expectation has been dropped so low for this franchise with that quarterback that I don't know how you could look at this and say, well, no, they're going to be better when they run him out there. Based on what? I'm so okay with them changing the narrative on that. I welcome it. I invite it. 3-6 gives us another week with something to do. I'm good with that.
If he comes out and he does what you're expecting, what most people would be expecting, then it would just sink us deeper into the confirmation, the answer that we've been looking for all season that we said is literally the point of this season.
That's what they want, isn't it? That's what they keep saying. We're going to put him back out there. It's about evaluating Will. Okay. So if the evaluation continues to reaffirm your position on Will, I just don't believe, I'm not calling them liars. All right. But I don't believe that they don't already have a determination on who this player is. I simply don't believe it. They can't say publicly whatever they might think of him, good, bad, or indifferent. They have to keep, they have to hold the fort, right? You can't just, and also you can't set the precedent of just taking players out when they underperform. That's not a successful way to coaching. So I'm not faulting them for not, just copping to it in week 9 and be like, or week 10, whatever it is. Week 10, be like, oh, you know what? You're right. You got us. Hands in the air. Will Levis not the guy. We're just biding our time. But every action that they have taken just makes me think so, other than we'll put him back out there when he's ready, when he's healthy. That's the only thing that flies in the face of they haven't made the determination on Levis. And I want to know who hasn't made the determination on Levis. Is it the coaching staff? Is it the general manager? Is it the owner who you basically got to a point where she included the promising young quarterback in her statement about why she was making what she considered to be necessary changes with the team? Who is this for? Because to me, it feels performative. And I don't know. I don't appreciate the performative nature of that in week 10 after you've just got to win, and the quarterback that gives you the best chance of the win is going to be sent to the bench for the guy that puts you directly in harm's way a lot of times. 615-737-1045, the number. If you want to chime in, we'd be happy to have you. How about, all right, Jackson, who is this person that you misspelled their name?
This is Mike.
Okay, Mike. How are you?
What we see is Mikey on to talk about Amu.
It says M-I-K-Y, and the subject matter is A-M-U. So I have no idea what the hell that means, but Jackson tells me it's Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hey, what's up?
Not much.
I have a couple of points I'd like to make. First off, I bleed orange. Right off the top of my everything. But Nico seems, and I don't want to say the word timid, but a little bit soft-spoken yet when it comes to running his offense.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to go to the thing that I told the guy, the Amy Adams Strunk. The Titans are never going to have a football team until they're rid of her.
Why specifically?
Well, she don't know how to run football. She's not. I would think that it would have to be on her end strictly business. If you're not winning then you get rid of people till you do. And when you do find the people, you got to keep the right people. You can't just throw them away.
I appreciate the call, Mike. I mean, she gets to make the decisions because it's her thing, right? If she wants to make football decisions, she can make football decisions. I mean, she's not Jerry, but she's involved. So that's not, it's not unfair criticism entirely. Now, to say with conviction that they'll never win anything as long as she's the owner, I don't know that, right? Bad owners win football games all the time.
She was the owner when they went to the AFC Championship game.
And she's also the owner that dug you out of the depths of what this thing was beforehand. Now it's cratered again. Now it's worth noting that it has cratered again. So whatever goodwill she may have bought, like that goes very, very fast when you're 2-6.
But like to say this football team will never be anything as long as Amy Adams Strunk is the owner, for whatever issues you have with decisions over the last 3 or 4 years, that's like looking at just the last 2 years, like Amy's been the owner of this team for just the last 2 years. When there's been a stretch of success, like you said, things rounded up when she took over as the controlling owner.
But by that logic, you would buy other people more grace than that, right? That's like saying, well, John Robinson wasn't just the GM for these last 3 drafts. He was the GM for the first 3 drafts as well.
Absolutely.
Like you could, but it's different because it's her thing. It is in her name. It is bought and paid for by her and her family. So, it's not to say that she couldn't delegate better. And I do think that they were way too effusive in how they were, and I'm not talking about her specifically, but I'm talking about people whose jobs are not directly the football team, right? You know what I'm saying? Like when you're talking about, and we've talked about the comments with Burke Nihill before about nailing the Callahan hire, and you're 1-6. There was just too much of that from ancillary. I'm not going to call him ancillary. He's the president of the team, but you understand my point. Like, he's not the general manager. He's not the head coach. Those are the people tasked with making the most important football decisions and talking about the football decisions in the way that they feel best discussed. Brian Callahan talked about Will Levis earlier at his press conference today. This is what he had to say.
We'll get his reps should uptick. We're trying to get him back rolling, and hopeful that that's sooner than later here. And he'll probably take a little bit more to keep sharp. I think Mason still needs to be ready to play, and he'll still take some reps, but I'd like to increase Will's workload this week, certainly.
Okay, so increased workload. Despite the walkthrough, they can see how he throws today. They can see how comfortable his arm feels after the fact. They've been pretty reserved and conservative with how much they're allowing him to do. He has talked about he doesn't even throw in pregame warmups right now, even though he's like around the team and out there during pregame warmups because he's concerned that he might set himself back by just going through the routine of throwing. So it's a tricky situation to manage. I don't envy him. Like that's the thing that I come back with Will Levis in the same way that we talked about Malik Willis. A lot of you guys made the professional criticism of Malik personal. It's never personal when you're talking. At least you do your damnedest to make sure that it's not. Sometimes it may feel that way if you're piling on somebody who's not performing. I'm sure Will Levis feels that it's personal. I'm sure, when Jeff got upset with me this summer, I'm sure Jeff took it personally that I said the performance that during practice that day was sloppy. It's not ever personal, but it is professional criticism. I'd be curious to see how he manages this situation. That's why I'm curious about the perspective comment that Brian Callahan made. Like I want to know specifically what he's asking this person to get perspective on. 615-737-1045, the number. How about Darrington up next?
Hey there, buddy. It felt like you was kind of contradicting yourself a little bit because you said you wanted to get rid of Levis, but doesn't he need to build up some more trade potential to get the most out of it, if possible? Then my question is for you, who do you think was a bigger mess up on behalf of Ryan and them, or Rand, should I say, between Uzier, Snead, and Boyd, as far as picking up? Because they all seem like total failures to me. And do you think Sam Bradford could be a potential quarterback next year? I'm pretty sure Vikings is going to be through with him. Just at least for competition-wise. That's all. We get out of there. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks for the call. Your phone line was a little low there, Darrington, but I think I got the majority of it. So the first thing,
got to turn the mic on to talk. It's been a couple days.
Shut up.
The first thing was
we're so back.
The first thing was, okay, you're going to say, why trot Levis out there when you've actually been able to move the ball with Rudolph, but you are the one banging the drum about trading Levis. So why
at
not
the
try,
end of the year?
Right. But so he's saying, why not try to build up any sort of value there?
I think that,
and the only way to do that is to play him.
No, I think you hurt himself more. I think you can potentially harm his train value if you keep putting him out there and he makes bad decisions.
I guess so.
Like let's because what we're talking about is he needs to have like a legitimate football breakthrough. Okay, now by percent, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. They are professional athletes for a reason. He is a talented player. He may well have a breakthrough that helps in that way. But I'm looking at this person at 25, closer to 26 years old. You're not fully formed at 25, 26, but you're pretty much there, right? And you're talking about rewiring brains and having perspective and making better decisions and all these different things. You're asking a lot. My point is you're asking a lot of this person. Now, that is the standard, and you should not diminish your standards that way, but you are asking a tremendous amount of this person in a highly pressurized situation where history would tell you he does not meet the moment. I feel that you hurt his trade value more if you put him out there and he goes nuclear again, even if it's just the once, because somebody will look at that and say, no, I don't want that guy. That's still there.
So what value would he have right now as a trade asset? Is there anything there other than, the traits that we talk about and the athletic ability?
No,
right?
it's just the traits.
That,
just
right?
the traits.
Okay, so I'm not sure why that would be any different if he were to just continue to put out a similar sample size as what he's done early in the year. Because then that would be true also at the end of the year.
Okay, but what do coaches notice as much, if not more than traits? What's going on in your head?
Right, I'm saying that wouldn't change. It would be the same as it was early in the year. So I don't know how that would bring him down at all.
No, you're just trying to hide it. You're just trying to get one over on somebody.
I guess. I guess so.
Did Kenny Pickett appreciably change as a player, even though he played out there? They got commensurate value for Kenny Pickett to be a backup. Will Levis is trending towards career backup. If he wants to be an NFL player, he's trending towards career backup. Can you put yourself in a position maybe with Will Levis to win games as a backup quarterback? I don't know, but a team will take a chance on that. That team took a chance on Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter didn't have any of the qualities, any of the traits.
That's what I'm saying. A
team's
going to take a chance on the traits and the qualities anyway. So I feel like there's more upward mobility there, however little likely you think it would be for him to show some semblance of improvement to up any sort of trade value. It might be all a moot point anyway. We might be talking about like a 6th-round pick versus a 5th. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know that it would crater whatever value he might have for him to just keep doing the thing that he's been doing.
What was the other part of this question?
Oh, it was Awuzie, Snead, Boyd. Which of those 3 signings do you think was the biggest mistake in the offseason?
Awuzie. L'Jarius Snead is one of the best quarters in football. You do that trade again, even if he's missed some time and he has the degenerative knee situation. I don't agree with that much guaranteed money on 2 corners. And not just because Awuzie had injuries in the past, and it's nothing against him personally. Like he's a fine player when he's out there. He's totally competent corner when he's out there. But you tied up a ton of guaranteed money in the highest variance position in football. So if you had to make me pick the lesser of 2 evils, I would do the Snead contract again, and I would not do the Awuzie contract again. Tyler Boyd is a 1-year deal. That's not it. Cheeto's here for 3. Last call for phone calls if you got them. Polls will update them coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Last segment. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045. A transaction made official that was reported on earlier today. Quandre Diggs and Lloyd Cushenberry to injured reserve. Those are two official transactions, and the Titans have officially agreed to terms with safety Mike Edwards, who comes in to replace the injured Quandre Diggs. So that is less than ideal. Something that was posed to me, was it yesterday, Jackson, that somebody called in with that question about does Lloyd Cushenberry's injury and that it will bleed into next season with the Achilles, does it impact your decision to take a rookie quarterback or not? That was a call yesterday, right? That wasn't a primetime thing?
Might have been a primetime thing.
Excellent. Well done for listening to the show. That was definitely a radio show call. I had no idea what I was talking about. Literally you and me for 3 hours yesterday. What do you pay attention to? I'm dying to know. What is so important back there that it takes up so much of your attention that you aren't listening to the thing that you're tasked with listening to?
I just black out for 3 hours back here.
I mean, we tune each other out all the time. I'm not going to hammer you for that one.
I am.
What one caller said or didn't say. I wouldn't think so, though. Right? You can't. No. You don't.
There are a million different things that might impact your decision there, but Lloyd Cushenberry having an Achilles tear is not one of them.
We were picking at 3. You're like, well, I don't know if we're going to get Lloyd back. No, next year. I don't think so.
So, yes. Quandre Diggs and Lloyd Cushenberry to injured reserve. Mike Edwards signed officially to the team. With everything, Jill Morris, thank you for listening, Jill, in the YouTube comment says, it was on this show. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
You're right.
If you were, you'd fix it. And I have zero confidence that, just as I have zero confidence that Will Levis is going to have an offensive turnaround if they put him in there on Sunday, I have zero confidence in you improving your performance. You're the Will Levis of this show. How does that feel?
Feels pretty good. Do I get mayo?
No. It's like he wasn't listening to me the other day. He asked me for a Snickers because I brought in leftover Halloween candy and I wouldn't let him have the Snickers. No, not until you listen to the show.
See, that is where you do make it personal, though. That sounds personal.
It is personal.
You're the Will Levis of this show. How does that make you feel? You just went on a whole rant about how it's never personal when you talk about these players. It's never personal. Yeah. And then you just hurl an insult at Jackson by calling him the Will Levis of the show.
Yes, your performance is reflective of that.
You also want me to revoke the poem, which would also feel personal.
That would be more personal. I've ceded that position. Jackson is the person that wants you to now take back the apology poem that you gave the quarterback in training camp.
I think we should bring the apology poem back. Play it instead of the open.
I'm fine with that. Every day. Corey is up next. Hey, Corey.
Corey is an Uber driver, just in case you're curious on the
Thank you.
How does Corey listen to the show better than Jackson does? It just pissed me off all over again. Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome. I want to ask about the quarterback market as far as free agents coming up this year. Is Justin Fields going to be a free agent? Do we have any other notable free agents that would be better options than maybe going with a rookie quarterback in the draft?
Yes, there are some options, and Justin Fields will be one of them. We'll probably spend more time, dialoguing or going through all of those this offseason, but I'll just since he asked, provided that our internet operate in a timely fashion here, I'll pull up the quarterback list on Spot Track.
Why don't we just do this tomorrow?
Pending 2025. Why? You want to do it tomorrow? There is so much time between. There's a game that they play this weekend.
I guess
quarterback free agent talk?
I guess we could squeeze this into 20 seconds.
I'm just going to squeeze it in here real quickly to talk about these quarterbacks, and then we can spend more time on it this offseason. So the list is Darnold, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jake Brisket, who is, if you're unfamiliar, Jacoby Brissett, Heineke, Mariota, Drew Lock, Stidham, Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, who is better than any of them, Winston, Mac Jones, Wentz, Garoppolo, Case Keenum, Mason Rudolph, Easton Stick, Cooper Rush, and Josh Dobbs.
Sometimes to go forward, you must go backwards. Bring Mariota back 2025.
Will you get his name right if he does come back?
How the hell are you a Titans fan and you don't know how to pronounce the quarterback's name?
I haven't said it in a while.
Mar, not Mayor. The bidding war for Justin Fields, if Russ just kind of keeps elevating this Steelers passing offense and Fields just rides the bench the rest of the year, the bidding war for Fields this coming offseason would be fascinating. as a free agent.
Why wouldn't they just try to keep him?
I'm not saying they wouldn't.
I mean, how old is Russ? Russ is 35, 36. Why wouldn't you try and keep Fields if you're the Steelers? So, yeah, to answer the guy's question, pending free agent, yes, that is the situation for him. Paxton will be the last call of the day.
Oh, man, I feel honored, bud. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I hadn't done a deep dive yet into my question, but just curious to know off the top, kind of to go along with the last caller, what free agent offensive linemen do we have? How is that class going to look? I kind of feel like if we can get a quarterback and it's young and we can get a really good offensive lining signing class or have that really set up, I think that'd be the best course of action over, getting a quarterback in the free agency. So hang up to listen. Thank you. I love you guys, man.
Thanks for the call. We love you too. Nobody's told us they love us in a while. Although somebody yesterday called me the effing goat, but they didn't say effing.
No, they did say effing.
Well, they said it, but they didn't make it FCC safe. Well, shout out to Alexander. Well done by him. The best free agent offensive lineman is a 34-year-old Zach Martin, who has had back issues in the last couple of weeks. Again, there are no good offensive linemen in free agency. Rarely are there good offensive linemen in free agency because teams are desperate to keep them if they are that much better than what's available on the open market.
Yeah, Cushenberry was one.
Cushenberry is one.
I get your point.
Polls.
Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Robert says Vanderbilt not getting into the college football playoff top 25.
Well, at the expense of Missouri, which makes it feel dumber.
They did lose to Missouri, and Missouri is a 2-loss team. Vandy a 3-loss team, but Vandy does have better wins without question, and some better losses.
I guess I should say for the sake of, not at the expense of.
Yeah, Wade says Jerry Jones on the trade market. Did the Titans miss an opportunity yesterday? If so, what was it? 70% say no. They did not miss any opportunity. Jack says they missed an opportunity to trade Arden Key. Jay says they missed an opportunity to trade Sebastian Joseph Day.
Sebastian Joseph Day is the only one that I can really nitpick them for. And even then, it would be just kind of like, I just wish you would have, right? Like, it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't overwhelmingly help anything to keep him right now, even though he's a quality player, and maybe you want him here beyond 2024.
We also don't know what kind of offers, if any, they actually got formally on Sebastian Joseph Day. After last night's playoff rankings, who do you think the committee would favor at the end of the season? A 10-2 Tennessee or an 11-1 Indiana? 65% are going with a 10-2 Tennessee. That would be interesting because
brand bias.
That wouldn't be an 8-9 discussion. That'd be closer to an 11-12 type of discussion.
Brand bias. Shameful.
Which fan base should be most upset about the CFP rankings? Jack says it's your Indiana Hoosiers. Ashley says Vandy. Vandy fans very miffed they did not get into the top 25.
Well, I get it. Well, let's keep it to the top 12. I do think Indiana has a case to have better seeing. I mean, I honestly would advocate for them over Penn State if I wanted to get really, really crazy with it, even though Penn State's one loss is to Ohio State. It was a close loss, so you can't really bury them. But all Indiana has done is mow teams down in front of them. Nebraska is the best win on the schedule. Nebraska is not a quality team.
Steamer or iron? 54% are going steamer over iron.
Yeah, you're wrong.
I guess I just have an ineffective and inefficient steamer.
I would agree with that assessment. You need to clean the thing out. They get clogged from time to time.
That doesn't happen.
That's a real thing.
You're lying about that.
That's not a lie at all.
Those are the polls.
Maybe just buy a new steamer.
I've had it since freshman year of college.
Okay, yeah, definitely get a new steamer. God knows what kind of cat hair, dog hair that thing is clogged full of. That's going to do it for us today. I'm off to practice. Prime time tonight. See y'all.